Well done. You made it. I think everyone's in now. There's a few videos not turned on. If you can find your video button, should be on the bottom left of your screen to turn your video on. We're going to keep you all muted like in previous weeks. We'll keep you all muted while I'm talking and while the guest speaker's going. Today, this afternoon, we've got Simon Brock, who is a clog maker up in, oh, I've forgotten, but I think it's Leicester. Simon,
Sheffield.
It is it? Yeah.
No, Sheffield.
Sheffield, well, you know, Sheffield, Leicester. I'm down in Newport, so it's all the same to me. It's, yeah, so Simon, clog maker up in Sheffield. We're going to have about 20-30 minutes to listen to Simon talking about the work he's doing, showing us around his workshop, hopefully showing us some of his specialist tools, talking about what he does. And you'll have a good 20 or 30 minutes to chat with Simon afterwards, ask any questions you've got or make any comments. And that'll be us for the day. What do I need to do? Any housekeeping? Not really. Same as previous. If you need to ask any questions during the talk, you have a chat function at the bottom and you can write questions in there and we'll get to those at the end. Otherwise, when we come to the questions and answers, just wave your hand like this, keep waving your hand and eventually we'll get to you and, you know, and we'll let you ask your question. I think that's about it. I've got a couple of announcements at the end. I'll introduce you to Peter, I won't introduce you to the whole team, but Peter, wherever you are, hello Peter, there's Peter, he's our co-host today. So any trouble, and he's the guy who's going to kick you out of the room and mute you and everything, but there will be no trouble, I'm sure. All right, you can mute me now, Peter, and Simon, you've got the stage. I would recommend everyone puts their cameras on speaker view up at the top right corner, and then you'll get a full screen view of Simon when he does his bit. Hello, Simon, there you are, you're on.
Hello, Chris, hello, and hello everybody else. I would say it's good to see you, but I should just point out my wife's the camera person for today. So if you try and chat to me, I won't see it. So if they've got anything to say, then I guess we'll get to that at the end. But as Chris says, Simon Brock, I'm a clog maker. I'm based in Sheffield, not Leicester. And I am probably, well, as far as I'm aware, the youngest full-time clog maker in the country. And when I say clogs, I'm talking about British style clogs, which have a wooden sole and a leather upper. So if you're coming here expecting to see anything Dutch, then you're going to be a little bit disappointed. The idea of my little spiel then this afternoon, I want to try and talk through how I get from the raw materials to finished clogs. And I've got a couple of little processes that I can actually do live on air. So begin at the beginning then. The raw materials I use are wood. So here we've got a nice pile of sycamore. Now, historically, the various timbers used in clog making, alder was a good one because it carves very easily by hand. But if you're using some machinery, and I use some machinery and some hand tools, and sycamore's a good bet for that because it machines quite nicely as well. The other advantage is to using sycamore, it's got a very fine texture, so you can bash a lot of nails into it without it splitting. And as we'll see later on, that's a particularly important property of that timber. Ash has also been used, and some purist step dancers might tell you that ash makes a better sound. Other people, including myself, will probably reckon that there's more difference between two different trees of sycamore than there is between sycamore and ash. But there we go. So most of the time I use sycamore. As you can see, some of it's in the round. This is a pile that I got from the National Trust. The idea with the timber that's used in the round is you then split it down, and using a hatchet or similar, you can then trim the edges of that block and make a nice block, square-sided block of timber that's safe to go on the bandsaw bed. Obviously, that is not suitable for bandsawing as it stands. So there's a little bit of processing involved if you use timber in the round. What I also use quite a lot of is timber that's already been planked. So here's a chunk of sycamore, already been planked into just the right sizes. This particular piece is actually from Anglesey, as it happens. for reasons that I can't now remember, but mostly I get it from slightly closer to home. But you might be pleased to know that this piece that I'm using in the demo today is 100% Welsh. So that's one of the raw materials. The other raw material, as I mentioned, is leather. So there we've got some rolls of leather, and what I'm going to do is show you, talk you through how we get from the raw wood, the raw leather, to finished clogs like these, and I'll talk you through the different styles and so on of those clogs at the very end. So begin with the woodworking side of things. We'll pop through to the wood workshop. So this is the first stage. We've got the timber. It's either been round wood that's then been dressed, or it's this sawn square edge timber. The first stage is to cut what's known as a cast. And the cast is what the clog looks like from the side. So if you think about a clog sole from the side, it has a shape rather like that. And so the first operation is quite straightforward, really. We're looking at the timber, looking to edit out any defects, and that fits on quite nicely there. So if I'm making a size 4, I'll just put this template on, draw around it, and then bandsaw out that shape. And what that gives us is this. So hopefully that's nice and clear. That's the cast cut, but obviously it's square from side to side at the moment. So the next stage is quite straightforward, really. We're just drawing on a foot shape onto this cast. So on it goes, draw around it. And there we are. Now, once that's cut out, on the bandsaw, you end up with something that looks rather like this. So this is a rough sawn clog sole. You can see it's starting to take on something of a foot-like shape, but it's still very rough and ready. It'd be rather uncomfortable if you were to try and stand on that because there's no shaping on the top of the sole there. It's very clunky looking from the side, but we've made a bit of progress towards making something clog sole shaped. The next stage, which I'm not going to go into in any great detail because it's fairly dull, is some sanding. So there's an old disc sander here. Nice machines from 1960 and still works beautifully. And then we've got some slightly more improvised, shall we say, improvised sanding equipment, which is used for various other parts of the shaping, different points in the process. But what you end up with after some sanding is something that looks like this. So you can see the rough edges have been sanded smooth. The bottom's been sanded smooth to give a nice continuous curve so that when you're walking in it, that feels nice and natural to walk in. And so that's the stage we get to following the sanding. The next stage is to add a little bit more finesse to this shape because it's pretty clunky and unappealing at the moment. And so what I do at this stage, first of all, I'm going to draw around the edges a line that's about 5 millimeters wide, and that shows me where the grip is going to go. And we'll come back to the grip later on, but basically that's a rebate into which the leather is nailed. So I need to know the extent of the grip on the top and on the sides. Okay, so that tells me where that rebate's going to go. The next thing is I want to take out some material here. So if I just draw there and there, where I think there's going to be a saw cut made there, and what the limit of that saw cut is going to be. And then finally, where I want this cut to end, so the balance point, as it's known. Okay, and what I'm going to do next is take out that area there, because that's completely unnecessary. There's plenty of strength in the clog sole without that being there, so we can take that material out and make the clog sole look more elegant without compromising any strength. And the tool I'm going to use to do that is probably the tool that most people are most interested in clog making. It's called a blocker, and that's one of 3 clog knives. So if you can have a look at these guys here. these are the 3 clog knives, and traditionally these would have been used for the whole process. So as you see, I do use quite a lot of machinery because obviously it makes the process easier and it brings down the cost of the finished item. But in the olden days, these 3 would have been used to make the whole thing. And I say in the olden days, there's actually a guy at Kington in Herefordshire by the name of Jeremy Atkinson, with whom I've been doing some training, who still makes them entirely in that way without the use of any machinery at all. So the first one we're going to use is called the blocker. And if you can see that, it is just what it looks like, a big old wide blade. It's got a hook on one end and a very long handle on the other. So we're going to be using that first to take out that little shape that I showed you. Historically, that would have been used for all of the rough shaping of the sole. So everything I've just done on the bandsaw, that knife would have been used for the whole lot. However, I'm just going to use it now to lighten the look of the sole a little bit. So the first thing is I need to make that saw cut that I marked on earlier on. I don't know if any of you guys have got one of these Japanese saw, cuts on the pull. Find it a lot easier to work with than a classic tenon saw. So just cutting down to the mark I've made. Okay, hopefully you can see that. And what I'm going to do with the blocker is take out the excess. So here we go. Blocker goes into the hook. Plug sole rests here in a little sort of cradle I've made for it. And then there we go. And I can promise you this is every bit as satisfying as it looks. Bit trickier on this side because I can't actually see the lines that I've drawn. So a lot of this is guesswork and dare I say experience. You can see that with that tool, you can actually get quite an elegant curved line just with 1 or 2 cuts. Of course, the first time I used this tool, it was flailing around all over the place. And probably nearly lost a finger once or twice. And then just using it to hack out extra material. That's all excess material that isn't required. And you can see already that's starting to have a much more elegant appearance to it than the block as we had it just off the sanding equipment. So that's the other little thing I like to do, just nick these corners off. There. And there. Okay, so again, it's mainly cosmetic, but it just lightens the look of the heel there. The next knife we're going to use is a hollower. And the job of the hollower is to do some contouring to the top of the sole here, so that it will accept the last, so that it will accept the foot. So again, in it goes. And if you can get a sense of the end of the blade there, it's a compound curve, so it's curved in that direction, but it's also curved, it's also ground to a curve. So it does make quite a very flexible tool in terms of the cuts that it can make. So again, in we go. And let's get that nice and secure. And off we go. The idea with the hollower is to try and make a shape on the top of the sole that will follow the contours of the foot. one way of checking that it's doing that is to use a last. So this is the wooden shape, the wooden foot form over which we'll be stretching the leather shortly. But you can also use it in the hollowing stage. You see I've scribbled all over the underside of it. So if I sit that on there, those scribbled marks will transfer onto the sole, show me where the high spots are, so I know where to take out more material. The thing we're looking for is to make sure there's a nice deep hollow there for the ball of the foot, otherwise it gets really uncomfortable, and a bit of a hollow there for the big toe, otherwise that can be uncomfortable as well. So I'll just do a few more cuts on this. I would say that each one of these probably takes normally 15 to 20 minutes on the hollower, which obviously we've not got time to do. But I'll just make a few more cuts so you get the idea. There we are. I think that'll suffice. But you can perhaps see that the last is sitting down better now on the sole than it was before, sitting down quite snugly there. There's a bit of a gap there, so if I was gonna, when I finish this off, I'll be wanting to take a bit more material out there so the last sits down nicely on the top of the sole. The other knife, which I'm not going to demonstrate at all, and the reason is because I'm not very good with this one yet, hence my training with Jeremy in Herefordshire, is called the gripper. And it's just a simple V-gouge, again on the end of one of these long hook-ended levers. Works in just the same way as the other two. And what the gripper does is creates the grip, which I mentioned earlier on. And you can see on a finished sole, that's the grip. Now I use a router for that because, frankly, why wouldn't you, rather than get into grips with that tool. But this is a finished sole now. You can see it's been sanded again, so the top surface is nice and smooth. Off the hollower, it's sometimes a little bit rough, a little bit bumpy. So a bit of sanding there, more sanding on the underside, taking the arises off, put the grip on, put my little branding mark on to show that I made it, and the size, and I even number the soles, so one day I'll be able to work out how many clogs I've made in my career. So that's a finished sole. Next step, we need to put some leather on it. So this is the other half of the workshop, the less dusty half, and you can see I've got a big workbench here. I've got a sewing machine there, an old treadle-powered sewing machine from I think it's from the 1930s. It still works beautifully. And a clog upper is made of a number of bits of leather. The most common style is called a Gibson. Okay, so that's just a fairly simple lace-up style. This one, as it happens, has got some nice decoration on it, but most of the time they don't. So the Gibson style is made up of these pieces. You've got an outer counter and an inner counter, and they eventually will go together and form this bit around the heel. So that's the shaping around the heel. You've got these bits, they're called quarters. And then you've got this bit, which is a vamp. And so the idea is that you stitch them all together, you know, and create something that looks rather like that. So it's already started to take on the shape of a clog upper at this stage. But what we need to do then, of course, is stretch it down over the last. So I'll just grab that last again. So I've got a full set of these lasts in different sizes. There's a few up on the board there. There's quite a lot of gaps because I've taken some of them home to give them a bit of a fettle and oil the springs and so on. But there's all sizes from tiny sort of children's sizes up to really big adult sizes. And this is the former around which the leather is stretched. It's not a process that there's particularly the time to do now. So I'll just describe it. Basically, you soak the leather in water, warm water, and then tack it onto the sole at the back, and then you stretch it down over the front and you stretch it down over the sides and wiggle it around a bit, and eventually it sits down nice and tight over the last, and so you get that really nice foot shape. you will note that at this stage, there's quite a lot of excess leather, which is deliberate because those are the bits that you pull down with the lasting pliers. So if there wasn't that excess, you wouldn't be able to grab hold of anything. So that's the reason why you got this sort of skirt of excess leather. The next stage after that is to trim that leather off. So once the leather's dried, which normally takes about 2 or 3 days, you just run around with a Stanley knife into that rebate, into that grip, and cut the leather back so that it's nicely finished off level with the top of the sole, or rather level with the bottom of the grip, I should say. And then the final stage in the lasting process is also quite satisfying. We're going to break the last and pop it out. So you can see these lasts have got a spring in the middle. And that's how you get the last out, in case you were wondering. It's not going to be trapped in there forever. So we can pop this in, break the last. He says, this is live television for you. There we go. And out it comes. Whew, eventually. So that leaves us with clogs which are finished, the leather's shaped. So the leather's nicely shaped there, and that's going to hold its own shape now. It doesn't. It sort of sticks in the shape that we've put it in with the last. The only bit that's left then to finish the clogs off is to finally nail these up. So we'll take us over to the putting up bench, which is the last little bit of the equation. So to get from this, what we're looking to get to is something rather more like this. So there's a finished clog, and hopefully you can see all the elements of this. First things, there's a strip of leather between the sole and the upper there, goes all the way around, and that's known as the welt. It's just what it looks like. It's just a fairly thin strip of leather. And then going through the welt and through the leather into the wooden sole, then we've got a series of nails. And I mentioned earlier on that sycamores are suitable timber for clog making because you can put a lot of nails in it. And hopefully now you can see that actually there are an awful lot of nails going into this wood. We've got steel nails around the back, brass nails around the front. That's just a convention because in the olden days, brass nails were very expensive. So even on something like this, so this is an old pair from about 100 years ago, you can see we've got steel nails all the way, nearly round to the toe, in fact, and then brass nails just finishing it off. And this is like a Sunday best pair of clogs. You know, these aren't working clogs. These are a really nice dressy pair. And even there's not so much brass. So it's just convention to use steel nails around the back, brass nails around the front. And then finally, we finish off with this thing. It's called a totin. That's what they look like in their sort of flattened form. It's a piece of brass which goes over the toe. Not probably necessary for most people these days. It's a bit of a hangover from the days when clogs were workers' footwear, and that would have protected the front of the leather if you were kneeling down in a coal seam, or if you were working in an industrial environment where you're constantly kind of kicking things or anything like that, then that would protect the front of the leather. Nowadays, it's just kind of left on there, maybe as a bit of a nod to the past, and also because people quite like the look of it. So that's how we get from that to a finished, nailed up clog. So I'm nearly finished now, I think. Just want to show you a few finished clogs. Maybe interesting here for me as well to talk about the regional differences in terms of my own experience. So I probably make 50% of all the clogs I make are for step dancers, and step dancers need the bottom of the clog to be just bare wood. Maybe another 30% of the clogs I make are for Morris dancers, and they have to have rubbers on the bottom so that they can dance in them outside. And then the final perhaps 20% of clogs I make are just for civilian use, shall we say, just for people to wear every day. This is my pair that I wear to the pub, and you can see I've got some, well, I wear to the pub when the pub's open anyway. I've got some rubber soling on the bottom there, so they're safe to walk around in. If you were to walk in them with the bare wooden sole, then you wouldn't get very far without falling over. This is very typical of what the English want. English step dancers nearly always want black. Sometimes they mix it up a bit and ask for some decoration. but I would say 3/4 of all the English step dancers who come to me want black clogs. The Welsh, on the other hand, are a little bit more adventurous. So they'll have some purple ones maybe. The T-bar is quite a popular style with the young ladies in Wales. This is a pair with patent leather. I do sell quite a lot of those, so they're a bit bling, a bit shiny, a bit more fancy. Again, you wouldn't find many English step dancers wearing those, but the Welsh, like I say, are somewhat more adventurous. You might even see them in a pair of these. So this is a hair-on cowhide with a jaguar print pattern. Not very traditional, but a bit of fun. And I think particularly some of the younger step dancers quite like the clogs that are a bit more jazzy and a bit more exciting. I think that's me done, really. So there's a little bit of a tour. We've gone from the wood, cut the sole, talked you through the leather a little bit, and the putting up. And hopefully that was entertaining and interesting. And obviously now I think is the stage where we hand back over to Chris and see if you guys have got any questions.
I'm coming. Here I am. Simon, thank you so much. That was really great. That was just wonderful, actually. And I can see that there were several comments going on in the chat, which you might not have seen, but enthusiastic comments. People are enjoying it. So, we can, at the bottom of your screen, everyone, you'll see a little reactions icon. I think we can all show Simon a little clap in appreciation. Thank you very much. Well, fabulous.
Thank you.
Yeah, it's great. I've probably got a couple of questions, but I'll throw it open to the team here first, I think, and see, has anybody got anything they want to ask Simon now they've seen that? You wave your arms around vigorously, and that's Simon Poole. I can see you up there. Let's unmute Simon. Come on, Simon. You're talking to Simon.
Hi, Simon. That was great. Thanks very much. Yeah, I had a pair of clog boots in about the 80s. Do you do the boot versions? All the ones you showed me were sort of shoes?
Yeah, I've not got any at the moment. If you can pick this up, it's going to be a little bit small, but on the flyer there, I don't know if you can see those. So there's a picture of some purple ones that I made, which are a derby boot style, so very much like the Gibson, but just a little bit taller. Cool. So yeah, I have made some. There's not a huge demand for them, but I do make the odd pair every now and again.
Thank you.
Great stuff. Anyone else? Oh. Yeah, I see. Dan, is it? Dan, I see you. You're coming. I'm unmuting you. I'm trying to unmute you.
You got me, I think, now. Hello.
There we are. Go, Dan, you're on.
Fantastic. Thank you so much for this incredible little insight into your world. Can I just ask you, Simon, you know, I'm in my workshop today because I'm preparing for such similar things. And this is really exciting. This is a great move forward in sheds, and we really appreciate it. So thank you for joining us today. But what was your sort of startings into the practical world before you got involved in clogs, or did you just start with clogs?
No, I trained as a furniture maker.
Me too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I'll give you the full story quite as briefly as I can, because it is a bit of an unusual craft, and it's three crafts in one, really. It's woodworking, leatherworking, and shoemaking. So it is quite challenging. But when I left school, I went and trained as a furniture maker. I worked in furniture restoration for a few years. And then shortly after that, I actually met a chap called Trevor Owen, who was, well, he still is based in Cricket, but he's retired now. And he had been sort of the mainstay of the clog making scene for the dance world for kind of 30 years or so. And I met him at a festival, and I was like, oh, these are interesting, because I was really intrigued as to how you could make the soles, seeing all the kind of compound curves and everything. And he said, well, come stay with me and I'll show you how it's done. And that was 12 years ago, maybe 10 years ago.
I love that. So he chose you.
Well, in a sense, yeah. I mean, I guess I showed sufficient interest that he thought I was worth investing a week of his time in. But after that, then I went and taught myself leatherwork, and I just did pure leatherworking for sort of 5 or 6 years. And then it was actually Trevor who gave me a bit of a kick up the bum. He collared me at a festival and said, "Why aren't you making clogs yet?"
See, I told you it was him.
And, yeah. And so I sort of redoubled my efforts to put the wood and the leather together again. You know, it was clog making that got me into leatherworking in the first place. So yeah, so quite a long answer to a short question, but I think the main thing is that I already knew wood very, very intimately, shall we say, from my training and experience. So the materials didn't hold any fear for me. It was just a case of tailoring the skills to meet the requirements of the particular, you know, the clog making side of things.
Oh, that's fabulous. Thanks so much for that. And quick shout out to your camera person today. Thank you to you too.
Oh, yeah.
Sure, we do. Thank you.
Thanks, Dan.
Good, thanks, Dan. Okay, anyone else? Wave away. Here we are. Les, I can see you there, keen. I'm unmuting you, I hope. There's such a delay on the mute button.
Can you hear me now?
Yeah, go for it, go for it.
Oh yeah, thanks. Excellent talk, Simon. Thank you very much. And I'm amazed at the variety of skills that you have to use. But a couple of questions. One is, are they waterproof? Is the join between the leather and the wood waterproof?
Yeah, yes, up to a point. I wouldn't sort of wade in them.
No, no.
But they're certainly showerproof in the same way that a normal pair of shoes are. And that's partly the reason why you've got that welt strip between the wood and the leather. It just acts almost like a little bit of flashing, just to sort of shed the water so that it doesn't sit on the leather and wick up into it. If that makes sense.
Yeah. And approximately how much do they cost then? To be mercenary?
Yeah, no, that's all right. For adult sizes, sort of middling adult sizes, they start at 110. That's with a kind of entry level leather, shall we say.
Yeah.
The more complex they get, I mean, I've got a couple here. This is an order from America, actually, and someone wanted this decoration on the side of the soles.
Oh,
so as you can imagine, that adds a few quid.
Yeah.
And then if you want the decoration on the leather as well, that adds another few. So they can go up to about 170, 180 if you have all the bells and whistles.
Yeah. Oh, that sounds pretty good though.
Yeah, I mean, I think if you were wanting a bespoke pair of shoes, you'd put a 0 on that.
Yeah.
Still think they were probably quite cheap. So.
Yeah. Yeah. Thanks.
Okay. Thanks.
Good. Thanks, Les. Yeah, I was also wondering about the waterproofness. I wonder, you're not using any glue. You're just using the nails, are you, to hold the leather uppers on? That's
right. Yeah. The idea being that when the wood, I'll show you something else actually, which is, I do get quite a lot of this kind of work. So this is someone who sent their clogs in to be re-wooded. So these are some Morris dancing clogs. You can see that the irons have worn down quite significantly, but the wood itself is not in great shape. There's some splits and cracks and so on in there. And so I can take the leather top off, make new soles, and put the leather top back onto the new soles. So this person gets to keep these leather uppers that they've had since 1980, whatever, which may have some kind of sentimental value to her or whatever. But if you were to glue the upper and the sole together, then there'd never be an opportunity to do that. And I guess in the olden days when they were used as working footwear, you'd be re-ironing them probably every couple of weeks, maybe, and you'd be re-wooding them every few months, perhaps. So it's important that the two bits can come apart.
Okay, yeah, that's fascinating. Right, anyone else got anything else for Simon here? Don't be shy. You'll leave this afternoon session with burning questions left unanswered. Come on. I'm not seeing anyone waving their arms around. I got another one, Simon, which was just that I'm curious as to where your, what do you call them, your blocking tools come from. Obviously, you're based in Sheffield, a good spot for getting steel tools made. But I assume they're custom made, and are they made locally by someone?
They used to be, yeah. They used to be made by this outfit. If you can see the stamp, Henry Carter of Highburton, which is near Huddersfield, so just up the road. And as far as anybody can work out, Carter pretty much had a monopoly on the manufacture of them, but no one makes them anymore. So these tools are probably turn of the 20th century. And they are fantastic. I mean, they hold an edge really well. I think every now and again someone has a go at making a blocker, and that's fairly straightforward. But to make a hollower, you know, that there's a, I don't even know if you're a really skilled blacksmith. That's hard, because it's two different kinds of metal. The cutting edge and the handle are not the same metal as each other. They're you know, bashed together in some way that I don't understand, because I don't do metal work.
You got I guess you got a tempered steel blade, have you? But a sort of cast rough, a wrought iron handle and backing.
Yeah, I think that's right. Yeah, I know someone did tell me that the melting point of the one and the melting point of the other, you know, let's say the melting point of the handle is here and the melting point of the blade is here, and there's only a very narrow window of temperature in which you can actually get them to you know, melt together. So they are, there's quite a few out there. Obviously all the clog makers have got a set, and they do seem to kind of breed a little bit. So if you've got a set and then someone hears about it, then you sometimes get given them and things. But the set that I use, quite a nice story really. There was a chap who was living in Dorset, and he kind of heard on the grapevine that I was setting up and offered me these tools. So I went down and picked them up, and he said I could have them he was from Lancashire originally, and he said, yeah, just take them. As long as you use them and you take them back to the north, you can have them for free. So I've managed to do both of those things.
That's fantastic. Good. Great stuff. All right. I mean, I can keep going. I'll talk to you all afternoon, but I don't want to hold the show.
That's a question, Chris.
Yeah, go on. Where are you? Peter?
I'll be here somewhere. Yeah, just a quick one, Simon. Where's, in terms of your business, is it mainly in the UK, abroad, or areas of the UK?
Yeah, I would say it's probably 2/3. No, maybe half is England, a quarter is Wales, and then the other quarter is everywhere else. So America, Canada, Australia, Russia even. Actually, no, it's probably about 10% overseas, and then maybe kind of 50% England and 30% Wales, something like that. So mostly it's the UK. The places where it isn't the UK, it tends to be places where the British have colonised in the past, or people are dancing a British style of clog dance. So I made a whole raft of clogs for a Russian team, but they're not dancing Russian steps in them, they're dancing Welsh steps, I think. And I have made a couple of pairs for Patagonia, where there's a little Welsh outpost down there. So they're pretty much exclusively going to places where people are dancing a British style of dance. Yeah.
And are they known as clogs generally, or has every country got their own terminology? I guess you're an expert in what other people in other countries call clogs.
I wish I was, but no. I mean, to me, well, I am always at pains to point out to people that the British clog is, I think, unique in having a wooden sole and a fully enclosed shoe-like leather upper. So if you think about the footwear that's called clogs from other countries, you've got the Low Countries where they're all wooden. You know, when you talk about clogs, people automatically imagine a Dutch girl standing in front of a windmill, I think, wearing a pair of clogs, but they're fully wooden. Scandinavian ones, I think, tend to be kind of slip-ons. So they've got a wooden sole and a leather upper, but it's not a fully enclosed shoe-like leather upper. So my understanding is that combination of the wooden sole and the fully enclosed leather upper is specifically a British
Yeah.
phenomenon. But wooden soled or partly wooden footwear seems to exist throughout Europe in one guise or another.
Thank you. Thanks, Simon.
Okay.
Fascinating stuff. Fascinating stuff. And clearly this would be potentially a great job for a CNC miller or something, a computer-aided milling machine to do, Simon. But I guess...
I thought we agreed not to swear on this call.
I can see some frowns around the place. I mean, I guess I'm assuming it's not a massive marketplace here, so that sort of mass production wouldn't particularly be warranted anyway.
Yeah, I think you're right. Now there's a factory in West Yorkshire called Walkley's, and that has existed in some guise or another for decades, and they do make clogs in quite considerable volume, and they make their soles on a sort of adapted copy lathe. The stuff that I do, and Trevor, who I learned from, and a few other sort of hand makers like us, is a very different, making clogs on a very different scale, very much smaller scale. The thing is, I mean, it would take the joy out of it anyway, and the craft skills in and of themselves, I think, are sufficiently important. They need to be kept alive just for their own sake. And the other thing is, probably a third of all the clogs I make are not standard sizes. So there's some kind of alteration from a standard fit. Someone's got bunions, or someone's got a foot that's, a very long big toe or something like that. And someone's had an operation on their foot and that's left their foot an awkward shape, or whatever. And those can all be accommodated if you're cutting by hand, or, if you're making by hand, I should say. But obviously, if you're bashing them out on a copy lathe or any other kind of machinery, that's not so easy to do.
And not nearly so satisfying. I must say, if ever I'm in the area, I'd like to come and have a go with that piece of sycamore and that block. That did look like fun.
All right, I'll get the plasters ready.
Yeah, you haven't lost any fingers yet, no?
Not yet.
No, yeah, we won't tempt fate. Let's say no more about that. I think we're coming towards the end there. Unless anyone's got any burning questions left to do, I see no hands going up. I want to thank you again, Simon. It's been really fascinating, actually. I've really enjoyed it. I'm sure everyone has. I've got a little poll now. Thank you, everyone. I have got a little polling survey. Now, I tried to do this at the end of the last session, and it was a technological fail, but unthwarted, I'm going to carry on and try again. I'm hoping, well, it has come up. So I'm going to ask a question about our special guest speaker, just to find out whether people have enjoyed the speaker. Simon, don't be worried. I'm not going to share this back, although I don't think there's any risk that anyone's going to come back saying that they thought it was rubbish. But I think it's fair not to actually share it here, but I will discuss it with you in a briefing session later. Is that all right?
Yeah, sounds good.
I'm going to launch this poll. Let's have a go and see if it works. Do people have this on their screen? Can they see something now? Yeah, good. You could answer that and then say it's done. Look at that. Right, Simon, it's safe. It's looking good. So. This is high risk. I mean, I'm not quite sure how you would say to a speaker, oh, I'm sorry, everyone hated that. But I'm keen, because we're doing an early stage thing. That's great. Yeah, you've done really well, Simon. That's good. No problem.
Okay.
I'm not going to share the results, but they're great. I've got another one. It's about the Zoom. Very quickly, while we're on it, look, let's just do this and say, how easy was it to get here today? Can you see that one? Because this is a new venture for us, it's really great if we can capture some of this feedback and see whether, this thing is working, what sort of things people want to hear in the future. Now, I did, after the last session, send out a little online questionnaire. I had a couple of responses back. I'll attempt to do the same again for this one, because again, it will help us develop the idea, try and identify new sorts of speakers that we might want to get, you know, generally see whether we're going in a useful direction for people. I should have had another question on here saying, how do you find it to use the polling survey software? Okay, nearly all done. A couple of little announcements while you're finishing that off. Our next session that is in about a fortnight's time. I'm sorry I haven't written down the date, but I have written down, we've got Wendy and Clive Elsden, who are both leathercraft workers, in fact. So that'll be interesting because they'll focus specifically on the leather bit, and that'll take some of what Simon said today a little bit further for us. That's a couple looking for their own home. They've agreed to let us in. So that's coming up in a fortnight. We will be posting as ever on Facebook, and you'll all get an email about it.